Hello guys, this is part 5 of ASP.NET MVC series. In this video we will learn how to create a view to insert data to a database table. So in this video we will also discuss what is the difference between HttpGet and HttpPost attributes. We will be explaining all these things in a bit, so please have patience, and we will also discuss the significance of all the things mentioned over here. So before I explain all the things, let me quickly add a view for creating a new student. So again I will repeat one thing guys, that I can make create view just in a couple of minutes, but because this video is for beginners, so I will explain all the things related to create view. I will possibly try my best to explain almost all the things which should be explained. So I have copied this index section method and I have pasted over here, and for creating a new student we do not need to pass any data to view, because we want to create a view which can show us the text boxes for name, gender, city, etc., which are the properties of our student class. So let me name this action method as create, and whenever you are going to insert something into the database, or you want to edit some data or delete some data, all these actions are require HttpGet and HttpPost attributes. And what are these attributes and why we use it, I will explain in a bit. For now let me add HttpGet attribute over here. This will show that this is the HTTP get request. Okay, so let me add a view for this action method. Add view, and definitely the template here now will be create template, and model class must be our student class, and data context class must be student context class. If it's not already selected, select it from here and then click add. So that's it. This code is auto generated. We have not written this code. This is the auto generated code which is responsible for preparing the view that accepts the values in name, gender, city, etc., in all the fields. So let me quickly run it here and let me show you how does it looks like. महफिल में तेरी हम ना रहें जो गम तो नहीं है, गम तो नहीं है, किससे हमारी नज़दीकियों के कम तो नहीं है, कम तो नहीं है। कितनी दफ़ा सुबह को मेरी तेरे आंगन में बैठे मैंने शाम किया, चन्ना मेरे आ मेरे आ, चन्ना मेरे आ मेरे आ, चन्ना मेरे आ मेरे आ बेलिया ओ पिया, चन्ना मेरे आ मेरे आ, चन्ना मेरे आ मेरे आ, चन्ना मेरे आ मेरे आ बेलिया ओ पिया. So guys, you can see that this view is automatically generated, and we have got this name, gender, city, and name, gender, mobile, and department ID over here. So whenever you are going to create a view for let me say as create view, you have to just select the create template and then you are good to go. So now let me add some data over here. Let me add some data, dummy data here, and department ID may be 1, and when I click click create, this is posted to this student slash create. But look at that, we have student controller over here, and we have the create action method over here, and it is redirecting to the same URL. But why is that it is not activating this specific action method, even it's matching the criteria? For now, because we have decorated this action method as HttpGet request, so it will always respond to HttpGet request, so it will not respond to the post request. So guys, whenever you click here, I mean to say, when you post this data by clicking on this create button, if you can see in the view, let me show that this is a form. Inside you have all the text boxes, and then you have this submit type button. So this is basically submitting this data, this form data, to an HTTP post action method on your student controller. So we do not have that action method, so let me quickly create a post action method of this create action method. So let me decorate it with HttpPost, and because we know that these fields data, that is name, gender, mobile and department ID, all this data is being posted to the post action method of the same name action method name. In other words, all the data will be posted to this action method, the HTTP post version of create action method. So whenever we pass any kind of integer type ID, like if this action method accepts some kind of ID, int type ID, I would write here int ID, but this is a student object. So what we need to do is just to write here student object. So let me call it as student. So now whenever the data will be posted to this create post action method, this object will be having that data. So to prove that, I am putting a breakpoint over here, and let me run it in a debug mode so that we can fire this breakpoint over here, and then we will proceed how to insert this student object into the database, and that will be the final step to do. So let's see. कितनी दफा सुबह को मेरी तेरे आंगन में बैठे मैंने शाम किया, चन्ना मेरे आ चन्ना मेरे आ चन्ना मेरे आ बेलिया ओ पिया, चन्ना मेरे आ चन्ना मेरे आ चन्ना मेरे आ बेलिया. So let me go to student slash create, and before we let me add some data over here, some dummy data, and then I will show you what's happening. So when I click create, this data will be posted to the post action method of student controller, and I will show you now how it's happening. So breakpoint is being fired over here. That means we are firing up this action method. When we just first time fired this URL, we got this output, but when we post this data, we activate this create action method, not this one. So this is the difference between HttpGet and HttpPost. That post action method will always be redirected when you post some data to the same view of that action method. So now to verify that the data is posted, let me mouse hover on this student object and let me check whether it has got some data. So right, we have this department ID 1, gender is male, ID, we are not passing the primary key, that is ID, from the form because it is incremented property, so we do not need to pass this ID. Then we have got mobile number and name, and you can see here this all the things are matching with these values. So now let me stop it here, and when we have this object that has got all the data of new student, what we need to do, we need to insert this student object into the database table. So for that, whenever we want to communicate to the database table, we create the student context class object. Let me copy that and let me paste it over here, and now we can communicate to our database. So let me write a query here to insert this data to the database. db.students.add, and let me pass this student object inside it. So the last but not the least thing is that you have to call the db.saveChanges method after that. This method is responsible for saving all the changes made in this context to the underlying database. In other words, whenever you write any kind of data manipulation language query, like you are going to save some data, edit some data, or delete some data, that means you are changing something else in your database. So whenever you write such kind of queries, you have to call this db.saveChanges method, because if you do not call save changes, your reflection will not be reflected into your database. So that's it. So now if I rerun this project, let me show you one thing. Let me rerun it again and let me add some data to the database table. Before we add any data to the database, let me show you the existing values. So if I refresh it, you will see we have just these 4 columns data, and now we are going to add some new data inside it. So you can see we have these 4 columns. Let me go to student /create, and let's add some data as let me pass the department ID as well. In future we will see how to get the department IDs or department names over here instead of hard coding the department ID over here. So we will see in later video sessions, but for now just pass the valid department ID, because if you do not pass the valid department ID over here, you will find the error. So for now, let me just create it and let me show you what's going on. So it will successfully add this row to the database, and it's again coming back to this view because this has now stopped refreshing. Let me show you that. Let me refresh it, and you can see here at primary key 5 we have Hamza male and this mobile number and the department ID as 1. So whenever you have successfully added a new student inside the database, you should go to the list of students, this list of students. So we want to come back to this list of students, and this is the recent data that we have added into the database. Now we have this by default create new link over here that is automatically added in our list view. Let me click on it. I am again back on this. So what if I want, whenever I create a new student, I should automatically redirect to this list, and I can verify from here that the new student is added. So for that it's a minor change that we have to do. Let me go back to student controller and post action method. When the data is successfully added, I am not returning a view, because if I return a view, it will again go back to the create view. So let me redirect to action, and this redirects the specified action using the action name. So if I redirect to action, let me pass the action method name. What is the action method name which is responsible for showing list of students? That is index. We have just we have made this action method in our previous video, so if you are new to this series, you can watch that video. So what is the error here? Return redirect to action. Okay, so that's it. Now if I save it, rerun it, and now whenever the student data will be posted to the server, it will redirect to the index action method. And what's that index action method doing? That is showing all the students in the student table. So student list is showing this list of all the students. Now let's add a new student again, and let me show you that how is it working. So this is the current list, and let me again add some data over here. XYZ, gender is male, mobile is something else, and department ID as 2, and let me create it. You can see here the new row is successfully added over here. So here you can change the HTML, you can apply some kind of border or anything else, or you can change this create button look and feel by just updating the HTML. So it's up to you. So let me add a bootstrap class over here, btn btl block and btn sub primary. Let me change its value to save, and let me rerun the project, and let me show you the changes. So you can see that our button is now updated, and its value is updated as well, and it's up to you. You can format this HTML, and you can make the look and feel of this form better and more better. And the next thing that we want to discuss is that, let me add a bootstrap class over here, class text success, and let me bring it to center, text center, save it, refresh it. That's it. Let me change the value of this text, create new student, and let me remove this heading 4 from here. Let me save it, refresh it. Now you can see that. Okay guys, now if I click on back to list, I come back to this list, and if we want to create new student, we have this link over here. So cool. Now we want to understand this auto-generated HTML over here. So this HTML is responsible for creating this these text boxes over here and these labels over here. So this div is responsible for name, this div is responsible for gender, and so on. So label for HTML helper method is used to labelize the attribute. So whatever the attribute name is, it is by default it is automatically fetching that name and displaying to the end user. And next thing is that we have got this next div over here. For one line of code is responsible for this editor for this text box is basically an editor for so helper method. So again it is referring to the name field, and this is the validation message for whenever the name field gets any kind of validation error, the validation error message will be shown up over here, and every field has got that validation message for under its editor for field. So to prove that, let me add some kind of validation in our student class. Let me decorate this name field as minimum length, or let me decorate it as required field. So, or let me required. So this attribute is present inside system.component model data annotations namespace. So I have added that namespace over here, and now you cannot leave this field empty. So let me save it, and if I refresh it and if I save it, it's not firing up that error message because we have to rebuild our solution, and it has added this empty row. We want to escape from such kind of errors. The name field is required. So for that, let me build solution again, and let me rerun the project. चन्ना मेरे आ चन्ना मेरे आ चन्ना मेरे आ बेलिया. So let me go to student list, create new, and let's check whether it's firing up. It's firing up this validation error property that is showing about entity validation errors property for details. So for some reason it's not firing up that error message, but in our later video sessions I will show you how to make it that possible. So okay, let me explain you in this tutorial how to fire up that validation error message. So let me add a check over here. If model state, this is being used to, which is this model state gets the model state dictionary object that contains the state of the model and of the model binding validation. So if model state dot is valid, if it is valid, then we want to save the student to the database, otherwise we want to redirect user to the same page. So if it is valid, we want the student to be saved to the database, and if it is not, we want to fire that error. So if it is not, let me return view, and whatever the data has filled so far, we want to show it to the user. So I have just updated this action method. Let me rerun the project and let's see whether it's working or not, whether the validation errors are being fired or not. Let's check it. So let's move to the create action method. So if I hit save, now you can see that the name field is required and the department ID field is required, because foreign key is required by default. It doesn't matter whether you are explicitly telling here department ID is required or not, but it has by default got this error message. But look at that, if you are putting this required attribute over here, you can see the name field is required, but there is no error message on gender mobile. So you can customize this error message, it's up to you. So to customize this error message, all you need to do is you can pass over here error message or required, and error message is equal to please fill this name field, or anything else you want to pass over here. So I have customized this error message. I do not want to use this default error message, so let me continue. And if I again save it, you have to rerun the project for this reflection. Let me rerun the project, and again let me go back to the create action method of student controller, create, and if I create it, now you can see that whatever error message you have customized, please fill this name field. So let me add this department ID over here. Now you can see that this error message has gone, but this error message is still intact. So if I pass in here Ali, and if I save it, you can see that this data is successfully saved to the database, and you can see the list of students. This Ali and department ID 1 on department ID 1 has been saved here, because department ID column has been removed from here. That is the reason department ID is not showing up here, but you can see that this Ali student is added over here. So one thing that is extra over here is that how to add this required or validation errors, and the second thing is that you have to do something like this. If model state is valid, if there is no error, no property errors, we want to save this data to the database, otherwise we are returning the same object to our create view. So that's it guys for this tutorial. Hope so you are understanding what's going on, and if you have some queries you can write in comments section below. Let me check whether we are missing something else or not. One thing that is being missed by me is that this add html.validation summary for. So by default this is true over here. So you can read this, that returns an unannounced list UL element of validation messages, and this is the first parameter is bool exclude property errors. These errors are shown up at the top of your form if you write here false. So let me write here false, that we want to show the we do not want to exclude the property errors. And if I rerun the project over here, so let me show you this as well, so that you may understand what is the purpose of this line of code. So validation summary for is responsible for showing such kind of errors on the top of the form. So by default exclude property errors property is true here. So if you want to show the error messages over here, you can make it true, sorry, you can make it false. There is nothing more to describe over here. It was all about create view. So see you in the next video. Stay tuned. Have a great day.